remember the first time you were taken?
Yes, I do, yeah. I said it was yesterday. I remember my dad taking me down to the dock. And we had these water bombers. That's where they put us, in there. Like we were cramped in there, and we took off.
And on the plane, you know, people were getting sick too, you know, because for most of us, this was the first time we were up in the air flying.
The further away from home I got, I realized the further away we were, I started to get scared.
I remember my bag, and I had long hair. When we got there, they took our bags, and all of us got haircut. They separated us from our siblings. I couldn't be with my sisters. I couldn't be with my brother.
And I remember waking up the next morning after a hard night. Waking up the next morning, I'm looking towards the east, where I was taught from my mom and dad. That is the direction we wake up to. That is the direction we look forward to for a brand new day. And I'm thinking, oh, today they're gonna come pick me up. They're gonna come and show up and take me back to the land. But it never happened.
The first thing that got me was loneliness, huh? Yeah.
Like we were so young, say 5, 6-year-olds being sent out to the residential school. I used to ask my parents, why couldn't you do, something? And they said that we were told you won't get no family allowance or you won't get no welfare. And if they didn't send us to school, they wouldn't get nothing.
My dad told me that he went to residential school himself. And it was bad at that time for him. And I don't know why he let me there to go there if he experienced it. Then he told me that I had to let you go because you need to get educated. There's better education out there, they told me.
I guess my parents wanted me to have an education, and I believe that they must have thought that it's a good place to go without realizing that what was going on in these residential schools back then. Yeah.
I started off in a moose factory for 1 year, and then I went on to Brantford, Ontario for 1 year, and 9 years in Lachuk, just about a 7-hour drive from here.
I started when I was 6 years old. They sent me off.
I attended residential school when I was 5 years old.
And then when I was 18, I came out of residential school.
I can say we were emotionally and mentally and physically abused, and for some of us we were sexually abused, and it wasn't something that people would talk about.
We were scared. We were always in fear. Some of the students that wanted to run away, some of them, they took that risk, and then they would be brought back and they would be given a strap.
There was one kid that used his Cree language, his own language, and the supervisor took that student and took him to the washroom and washed his mouth with soap.
My teacher used to pinch me in my arms or kind of slapped a ruler on my hand
But there's the assimilation too. They want you to forget who you are. You're a Cree Indian. They want to try to erase that, you know.
You know, I encountered some abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and I couldn't sleep at times. But the only time I would sleep was when it, you know, early that morning, it would say around 3, 4, 5, then I would be able to sleep. And I was afraid to tell people about it.
Especially at the one in Ontario, Brantford. Yeah, that was pretty bad. Yeah.
What was so bad about it?
Everything. You witness so many bad things. Even younger children being abused and even sexually. Yeah. And you see these things, but who can you tell? You know, you're so fearful you might be next. Yeah, that's Nathaniel, my son-in-law, Pearl, my daughter, my wife Lizzie, Melanie, my daughter, that's Albert.
Hello.
There's over there. The little guys are my grandchildren. Yeah. And they're giving us a tour.
Awesome.
Yeah, second floor. That's where we used to have our dorm. That's where I used to sleep.
Wow.
Maybe about 20, 30 of us in that floor. The younger guys. I was with the younger guys at that time.
Wow.
Yeah. Which school I went to.
Out of the 3?
Out of the 3, yeah. But I survived. This is where we made our first entrance into the school when we arrived by bus.
Okay, so this will be the start of our tour. This is the Mohawk.
Stand here, mixed feelings. I remember they used to have the what they call the infirmary here, where the nurses used to be. I don't know what to say. I never thought I'd walk in here again. I need to do that. Closer to that part of my life. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Since all the students were given numbers, right?
Yep.
You given a number? Yeah.
Number 13.
Number 13.
That's why I wear number 13 when I play hockey.
Oh, yeah.
That was my number. Actually,
Yeah?
13,
Wow. Yeah. How old were you?
I think it was about 8 or 9.
So I think it's creepy here now.
One of the things was not being able to express your emotions. By that, like if you were seen crying, you were labeled as a sissy. So for me, I did my crying under the seats. That's what I did. The cafeteria. The boys used to sell this. Yeah, my last tray is still there.
You said you're often hungry too.
Oh yeah. They didn't feed us too much, just tiny portions.
So this is the laundry room. A lot of girls would spend their time here working, doing laundry for the school, washing uniforms, washing sheets, stuff like that.
Machines that make a lot of noise. If any girls get abused or take it, turn on the machines, they didn't hear screaming.
Things were kept very private. The teachers didn't want other teachers or other students to know about it.
I used to witness a lot of things that are not very good in this place. especially in that shower room there. That's where I used to witness one of the younger boys being sexually abused in that room. Well, not being able to see my own parents for 10 months out of the year, yeah, that was tough. You weren't even allowed to go home at Christmas. If somebody died in the family, you couldn't go home. For me, I felt alone. This is why I learned that my grandfather had passed away. We got a letter from home.
Were you ever allowed visits? No.
That's me, number 13.
You see, every night they teach you to pray at the end of the day. And I remember the dormitory. We had bunk beds in there. And there was a row of 3 bunk beds down the middle of the floor. In the middle bunk bed, at the bottom, they'd have us kneel around that bunk bed. And we say our evening prayers. There was this young lady that was looking after us. One evening, she came into the dormitory and she had only her house coat on, and she started taking her robe off, and she was naked, and she laid on that bed, and then she had us touch her, and every other night she'd have 2 or 3 of us wash her every other night. One time, she wasn't there anymore. In her place was an older woman. And you know, our minds were so damaged at that point in time, we actually went to her. And I remember some of us were trying to lift her skirt. She started slapping us around, you know, and you can't do this, you don't do this, and it affected me. And I remember those who were in my group, a lot of them ended up in prison. A lot of them for crimes against women, against children.
Can I speak in Cree?
Absolutely, please.
Nichino echita como chuli echisingaso. Chuli drabskin singaso. Paczkan gacie trzeba skałąc skać. Kawit magia sekap maci. Minstima
Den har gaitit. Kenike. What's help me cannot to God. Ehtayan and gate him sweat. Nothing there, yeah. The band, you take a took her grave.
January 1 of 2000, my twin had hung himself. I drove over there as quick as I could, and he was already hanging when we found him. And that's when he broke the news to us that there was no one on this earth that would mend his soul that had been broken into a million pieces. He said, I've been sexually abused by 2 different men and during the residential school days. And for him it was devastating. I used to always wonder why he was so different from me. He was outgoing, but he was different when he was drunk. He was always upset at the world when things didn't go well while he was partying with friends. It was hard seeing him do that to his life. It was very difficult, even though many times I would talk to him, tell him to let go of the past, move on in life. Don't let the past control your life. Just let it go and find joy in your grandchildren and your daughter. And he would for a while, 3-4 months, but he wouldn't last. And he always blamed what had happened. He couldn't seem to cope with what had happened to him.
And the West Catholic School or the we nasty, Chikai, Chikai nasty. We based the muscle. Chikai nasty, we could cut on you. Tangashman to it go West. And when this could do it, you're going to be nasty.
When we left the residential school, it wasn't easy to talk about what I went through. I opened up to my wife at first. I just cried. I was in tears when I told her, well, I'm one of those victims.
The trauma, the abuse, I would say the abuse happened when I was about 9 or 10 years old. As a teenager, I'm trying to coping with these. Then that's when I started drinking a lot. I started being aggressive. I didn't realize that it was the trauma that was causing me to react like that.
The teachers were so cold. We weren't given support in school. When I was in high school, I dropped out because I felt this hatred in me of especially the French people. Just sometimes I feel I wish I could just go up to them, how much you have damaged me, where I could be.
When you came to school, the staff wanted you to learn. You know, a different language, different culture. And when you got back home, your mom and dad saw that you were drifting away. You no longer spoke their language. You were losing the culture. I pretty nearly lost my Cree.
And whenever we came home, I guess we sounded funny when we tried to talk our language. And being in residential school, I felt like I lost my sense of identity, because when we came home, we had like our people found us different. And then when we're out there in the Western society, like going to residential school, we don't fit in that society. So we were kind of lost.
I knew there was some resentment within me, because of what I had to go through. I guess my biggest regret was taking that first drink. And then from there, everything just went down for me. Even at times at my own parents, yeah. Because I felt that like they had abandoned me. But that was not the case. I learned after that they always loved me, yeah.
The way I treated my son was that I just pushed him away when things, like serious things, when he wants to talk about, and I said, never mind about that, or maybe that's the way my dad treated me, and I didn't know until he told me. That's how you treat me. And it really hurt. But it was between our parents. It affected them and it affected us being away from each other. We didn't know how to talk to one another, I guess.
I lost that sense of, that closeness, not being raised by my mom and dad. I dealt with this pain in a negative way. I started to abuse alcohol and drugs.
We would have party and we would drink right through the weekend. I would have $1,800 over the weekend. I would just blow it, not realizing that, more likely I was numbing the pain. And I was so aggressive. I was, physically hurting my wife too, and verbally hurting my children too.
When I grew older, when I was working, I was making money. I spent most of it on trying to get back to what happened on prostitutes. That was the only way I could find to get at them, especially white prostitutes, because that young lady that worked with us when we were young was white. But
the experience that we had is still there. You'll never erase it. No matter if it's an apology or compensation, you'll never erase the experiences we had at the residential school.
The scar is always there.
Scar will always be there.
Yeah, that's the area where the school was. There are a lot of former students that came here, and some of them bought their sledgehammers, I guess, because of the anger. I guess You can see them like destroying the bricks and all that. That's some areas. Well, there it is. Spent 9 years here. I used to be the principal's office, the bottom section there. There were times when they had to send me there. Still looks the same, Ezekiel. What I got? Yeah, this used to be my stomping grounds. And I guess my only regret is, like the last 2 years I was here, I was about to graduate, I started drinking. I guess because of what I went through, especially in the other schools. I didn't feel, I guess you can say, the way we've been treated, especially in the other ones, like there was no sense of worthiness in you. I didn't feel worthy. Yeah. Like you weren't really accepted. And of course, like being separated from your own family. Like I said before, it's like your childhood has been stolen. I don't know, as a young kid, you just had to, take it, I guess. Try and endure it as best as you could. Suppress it, I guess. It's most of the time that's what I did. There's a cross on this side. I've always wanted to go up there because that used to be one of my favorite places to go. I never, when I was in school, 11 years in residential school, nobody ever, no counselor, no priest ever told me about what happened at the cross. Even though, we always saw the cross in the chapels. Even in La Tuque, remember that we visited the cross on the hill. That was one of my favorite spots. I used to think a cross was just a symbol of the church. But now I understand it was religion that they were forcing on us. I became to understand it's a relationship. It's a relationship that God desires with us. So.
I realized that there's got to be more to life than just partying, and because I lost my dad when the last year I was in residential school, and I started to see a change in my mother's life. I started to see her go to church, and then I realized that she really believed in God and that she gave her life to God. And I saw the peace that she had, even though she had just become a widow. I wanted what she had.
I knew I had to get out of there. Get out of that kind of rut that I was in. Come out of it alive. Come out of it, trying to be a good person. I stopped drinking. I started going to church.
I thought getting married would ease the pain, that we would not need to talk about it, that I would just move on in life, but that wasn't the case. After our first child, I believe it was, slowly I was starting to close myself in. I wasn't saying much. Sometimes I knew myself that sometimes I got angry for any little thing that might have happened in the house. I would get angry at my children. I didn't realize that I was stuffing everything in without expressing how I really felt. And though I got saved in 1987, there was still this black cloud that no one knew about except myself. There's still something down here that I need to to verbalize and get it out of me, or else it's gonna eat me up. Eventually I did, and I can say I thank the good Lord for His word. His grace is all we need, and His mercy.
Being a Christian, being born again Christian, that's what really helped me. Changed my life because I was a drunkard before I became a Christian.
There was this resentment in my heart, bitterness of what I had to go through. Became an alcoholic. It almost ruined our marriage. Came to a point where I was going to leave the community. But I decided to hang on. We used to have these missionaries that used to come to our church. And one time I felt this real heavy burden in my heart. I never felt it like it before. And I knew I had to do something about it. I knew it was God that was ministering to my heart. So that evening I asked the missionary, I told him I have to do something about my life. I'm tired of the way I'm living. I'd like to give my life to the Lord. And he led me in the sinner's prayer.
And I started going to church as part of the expectation from what God would heal and restore me in my life. And God would forgive me for all the pain that I have caused. And I can say that was part of my healing journey. I don't want to hurt my wife. I don't want to hurt my children. I don't want to hurt my grandchildren. I don't want to hurt other people.
I can say that things were a lot better after revealing what had happened to me in the past. My children understood after telling them what had happened to me, and being sexually abused is not something that I would want my children to go through, and they were happy that I was able to open up and tell them my story.
But I'm a survivor, we're survivors. A lot of us have been extremely difficult. A lot of us couldn't make it. A lot of my friends are still, having problems with alcohol. Well, we'll make it. I worked for at least 17 years with the band here. And then I thought I need to go back and finish off some of the things I wanted to do in school. I came out with a certificate. And then somebody told me, hey, there's elections this summer. And then I said, oh, I wanted to be chief one time. So I decided to run. And I won.
Only as an adult, when I started working, my confidence came in and saw what I could do and what I understood. They said, oh wow, I love learning. And having 4 kids, I always had a desire of pursuing more of my education. And I thought, okay, it's now or never.
It didn't take me that long to read and write my language because it was already a part of me, and it's something that I took back, that I felt I lost during residential school, and that's something that I really treasure.
Even as a born-again Christian, I struggle with unforgiveness. I don't know how many years I struggled with that. Where it says in Matthew that, like, if you don't forgive others, God cannot forgive you. That really touched my life, my heart, when I read that. And there happened to be a conference, and I attended. It was about forgiveness. That conference really did something to me. At the end of the conference, I made a decision to forgive. I had better things to do, so I chose to forgive. And I did hear the former Prime Minister Harper, his statement. That was nice, but at that time I already made a decision to forgive and move on, because I knew that I was not created just to exist, but to live.